Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the WM32 Football podcast. And today I have finally been joined by somebody who I have been trying to get on the podcast for a very, very long time. And I'm delighted to welcome Lipa Nessa on the WM32 Football podcast today. Lipa, as well as being a Liverpool fan, you also have your own podcast as well. I think she's Offside. So, guys, please check that out as well. And been doing some fantastic work around women's football, especially. But Lipa, we're going to focus on you as a coach today. So, just tell us how old you are in the role that you've got currently.
So I've been sort of on and off coaching, still trying to find out who I am because the transition from being a player to a coach is quite a big move, and I didn't really know that as a player. So when I became a coach, it sort of all started in university when I decided to take the degree of sports business and coaching, and it was new to me, and I thought, you know what, let's give it a go. And yeah, I just fell in love with coaching. It was something so different about it. Like, as a coach, you're always thinking, even if you're watching a match with your favorite team, as you just said, Liverpool, the best team in the world. Anyways, when when the teams are playing, you're instantly thinking of tactics and how you could transfer what they're doing to your matches. So that, I think that's such a big difference from a player to a coach. You're always thinking, and you're always thinking of what you could do next, what can you improve on, what methods work for you and your players.
No, that's fantastic. You mentioned there obviously about transitioning from being a player to then going into coaching. How did you find that initially? And is there anything that you could potentially say to young people who might be in a similar situation?
So as a player, I was very young, so I was very confident at the time. So I thought to myself, do you know what, coaching, it's easy. Every player goes into coaching afterwards. It's like sort of their backup plan. So yeah, me thinking it's going to be so easy, I just jumped into it, thinking, you know what, all it is just pretending you know what you're doing, writing it on a piece of paper, and telling your players to just go, to then actually realizing there's a lot of work put in just for one activity in your session during training. And honestly, if I had the knowledge that I have now when I started coaching, I would have taken it more seriously earlier on, instead of thinking, do you know what, I could just faff around and do any sessions. So I sort of done it for fun, really, and didn't take it seriously the first time I started to coach, which was like 2 weeks into my university course. And then I took a step back and started reflecting on what I should do and what famous coaches out there have done. The likes of Sir Alex Ferguson, Pep Guardiola. At the time, I was really looking into their philosophy, how they became coaches, and what skills they attained from outside football, which they transferred within football. So looking at coaching completely, like, the perspective was completely different from going from fun to, do you know what, this is going to impact one person's life. And when I took that upon me, I thought to myself, okay, now is the time to hopefully change someone's outlook on coaching and on football. So yeah, and I just started to go, and I haven't stopped since, I guess.
No, that's fantastic. And amazing that you feel that sort of duty in order to try and change somebody's life. And obviously, we've mentioned the transitioning from player to coach. Did you always want to be a coach, or was it, as you sort of mentioned there, like a bit of a backup plan because the playing didn't quite take off as perhaps you would have wanted it to?
So at that time, I wanted to be a PE teacher, and the closest thing, I was like, okay, if I do coaching, then maybe somewhat I could get into PE and then teaching, because that's what I wanted to go into when I was 17, 18. And I was like, okay, let's do coaching. Let's see where it takes us. And yeah, there was something about coaching that was so different to PE that you do in schools, right? It was dedicated to one sport and one sport only. However, you do use other sports to work on different aspects. So hand-eye coordination, you might do tennis, and you might do, I don't know, rugby for team building. But it was different to what I thought it'd be, definitely 100%. And yeah, right now it went from fun to, do you know what, we're going to take this seriously. And yes, I'm going to just stay at grassroots level, and I don't want to excel within the professional environment. And that's purely because the fun that I see now is making sure I have fun whilst coaching, and I look forward to coaching. And not only myself, but the staff that are around me, they look forward to coming into coaching beside me. My players come into a coaching environment and see, do you know what, the coach has got this. um, I believe in my coach, and my coach will get me to the tactical ability that I want to be in a couple of years time. That's what I want my players to see, and the staff around me.
Oh, fantastic answer. Fantastic answer. And you mentioned, whilst in your time at university, you was almost studying the likes of, Sir Alex Ferguson. Would you say that he's one coach that you particularly look up to? And, are there any others that you look up to as well?
I've always been intrigued by him. There's something about him. He was very quiet but loud on the football pitch, if that makes any sense at all. And upon reading what other players, so your David Beckham, your Ryan Giggs, what they went into when they had a new cohort of players in Manchester United during the early 90s. Um, yeah, it was just so different to how coaches nowadays will handle that situation. And I remember reading a line that goes somewhat like, there was a picture hung in his office of a steel bar, and there were 11 people on it. And then a player was like, so why is that bar there? Why is that picture there? Why have you got that picture up there? What does that mean? And then Sir Alex went on to say that if one of those people jump off or lose their balance, then everyone on that plank will go down with him. And it's like that perspective of coaching, but it's not saying, oh, everyone needs to be in formation and play and get X amount of goals. It's then taking it back and looking at the bigger picture of being human, being part of a team, and seeing that if one thing in that system doesn't work, then everything around it will be ruined eventually. And listening to that and reading that really opened my eyes to my coaching philosophy and what I want for my players and the coaches around me, and what I want for myself as a developing coach.
Yeah, no, I think everybody can sort of resonate with that particular picture that you mentioned there with Sir Alex, and in his office. And I think, like you mentioned there, I don't think it was just players that would ask the question. I think it was even some of his staff that sometimes, when he would bring in a new assistant, for example, and get them in his office, they'd always say about that
Yeah.
that iconic picture. And you just briefly touched on there about your coaching philosophy. What would you, if you could define it, what would you say your coaching philosophy is?
My coaching philosophy has changed so much that it's always changing. Every month there's something different about it. But the foundation is, it's a quote that I read in a book a couple of years ago. A smile shouldn't be worth money. So a smile shouldn't cost anyone money, because a smile is for free. And as a coach, I don't charge people for my services. I do it purely because I love doing it and I'm in love with the game. But I know some people do that as a profession because people need to earn money to live, right? But for me, I'm in a position where I do coaching on a voluntary basis. And yeah, that's one of my key things, is to never put money on a smile and to use guided discovery for my pupils, so the players that come in. However, with age, that coaching style differs.
No, that's perfect, and actually, that's a fantastic quote. And I think sometimes um, coaches can almost lose that sense of just letting their players, or the kids or whatever, just let them have a smile on their face. I think sometimes it can be a little bit too serious, in the sense that it has to be serious like 100% of the time and everything like that. But ultimately, these are young people, so they've got to have fun and they've got to enjoy whatever is going on along the way. Um,
Definitely.
so within your coaching, I'm going to take it back to almost a team environment now, pretty much. Would you
Yeah.
say that when you've been coaching in team settings, you have like a defined playing style, way of playing, or is that very much dependent then on the group that you work with?
So I've got this new coaching role. I've just started I started in December, end of November, and I'm still trying to get to know the kids, who they are, um, how they are as players and as people outside of the playing field. And now I've grasped that my coaching style differs to who's on the pitch. So command style won't be that relevant if certain people are on that pitch. However, I would use command style on one or two players. However, I would use a different coaching style to other players because they may seem more sensitive or new to the game. So yeah, so it completely differs to the person I'm coaching and to the age group, as I coach 4-year-olds to 10-year-olds. So that is a big difference in age, and having all of those kids together, one could do a crossover and then another is barely kicking a football. So having that in mind really does give me the outline of my sessions and how I would transfer my sessions into a competitive environment on the playing field.
Nice, excellent. I think you've mentioned there pretty much about how you would go about coaching, and it seems that you've got a very, very wide range of ages, like you mentioned there, from being 4 years old to right up to 10. So
Yeah.
if you was to ever coach like a team, whether that be at grassroots level or whatnot, how would you like them to play?
Um, I believe um so if I had an 11 aside 10-year-old team, I would definitely use guided discovery because that's how I learned. Because as a player, when coaches used to use a command style on me, I would not get the game at all. You could tell me over and over again what you want from me, but if I'm not out there doing what I do, making the mistakes, and then essentially using trial and error to make my execution better, then I will not improve. So it's I mainly use what I went through as a player from what my coaches used to do to me, because I did have once upon a time a very old coach, and then that old coach went, and then we had a like fairly new coach just past his UEFA B, and his his way of teaching football was completely different to the person who was there before him. So I'm sort of doing what I was taught as a player, but adding my own flair with my own philosophy and style.
No, that's fantastic. And it's good that you've almost had a bit of a contrast from a playing perspective of, a bit of an older approach, and then somebody else that's come in and was, it seems anyway, completely the other end of the spectrum. So I guess as from a player perspective, that must have been quite hard for you then to transition from one style and then completely go the other way.
I've I almost felt like free. So when the first manager, I'll call him, left and this new manager came in, I felt as though I wasn't restricted. I wasn't in a cage, sort of. I didn't have to do um, a pass when I didn't feel I was comfortable or it wasn't a right situation to do so. Instead, I sort of carried out those small technical elements on the pitch with full confidence because the second coach said mistakes are okay to make them on the training session, and then if you try and do a skill, let's say a step over, it doesn't go right in a football game, a competitive match, then that's okay. You'll learn for the next time. And that opened my eyes, and since then, um, I became a better player and also became a better person. So having a sort of it was command style, but most of it was guided discovery, and that's because as a person myself, I learned better through that. I have to make the mistakes and I have to be out there to see what I've done wrong to then make sure my playing environment and the way I play on the pitch becomes better. And since then, the team that I was playing for went from not that good to cup winners. So it worked. And it's just knowing who your players are and working with them to see that to see if your coaching style suits them. And the thing with my coach, the second one that came along, he wanted to know who we were, not only inside the football pitch, but also what we do outside, so our school life and how that was going. So that was really nice. And I think most of the things I do is because of him and what he done for me. Yeah.
No, fantastic, fantastic. And it seems like this particular coach, the second one, had a real sort of big impact on you as a player. And speaking of players, are there certain qualities when you're coaching that you would look for in a particular player?
Um, Definitely. Manners is a massive thing. I'm a Muslim, and within my religion, manners are one of the key things up there, and I look for that within every one of my players, even when they're not Muslim. Like manners are what makes you, and manners take you further in life. And if you're not there to pick up the bibs and pick up the cones at the end of my session, just know that you are not welcome next time. And if your boots are not cleaned and you come to a match with uncleaned boots without a reasonable explanation, you are not welcome to play that game. And yes, that might seem very harsh on younger players, but that gives them a sense of responsibility, which makes them empowered to also allowing them to see take responsibilities and to see how they can improve themselves not only as a player but as a person in society. And they may even go into playing semi-professional or professional football in the future, and I want them to say, do you know what, I'm so happy that my grassroots coach taught me this, because now it's of second nature and I could transfer this into my professional game or into my business life if they don't want to pursue football competitively. So it's just building their skills because they're so young and kids pick up skills so quickly, and allowing them to find themselves but with manners and with respect. Those are the two key things I look for in a person. Um, and obviously, even if it's some technical ability, if they want to kick a football and they're not quite there, but they have that um, drive and grit to actually, do you know what, I'm going to kick this football. Yes, I might not do it right the first time, but I'm going to kick it again the second time. I might not succeed the second time, but I know one day I will kick that football and it will end up in the goal. And that's another trait that I see. So those three traits, if I find it in a player, that's it. You're going to be in my club until I'm ready to say goodbye to you.
No, that's perfect. And actually, I think that takes a real level and a massive sort of degree of patience as well, because it can be quite frustrating from, I guess, not only a coach's perspective but also a player's perspective when you see them not quite get it right, and you can see, you go through almost the step kind of process and principle of how to do something, and they're still not quite getting it. So there can be a level of frustration there, but it also seems from what you've mentioned there that there's a massive level of patience, especially with the young players that you've got. With that then as well, Lipa, would you say you have a certain maybe bias towards a certain type of player? They may not be the best player sort of technically or tactically or whatever, but is it would a player that you mentioned there about those mannerisms, that they're always willing to help out, is that a particular player that you would look at more than somebody who has got everything technically and tactically, but maybe their attitude just isn't quite right?
My answer to that is no. I treat all my players equally, because when I was a player myself, I was that sort of naughty kid that didn't want to do what the coach was, telling me to do. Hopefully none of my players listen to this, hopefully. I was that naughty kid that never washed their boots, and I was thinking to myself, why is coach going on one? It's only boots. But now, as I grew older and I've become wiser to life and reality, and manners is one big thing, an aspect of my life which I've sort of lost within my teenage years for a little bit, and then found later on in my teenage years. But yeah, all my kids are the same to me, because I see myself in their shoes, even if it's a kid that is a little bit agitated one day, or if it's a kid that has manners all the time. I've been in their position of being super hyperactive to miss or coach, what can I do for you? Can I put the cones out? To coach, why do we have to do this drill? I don't want to do this drill. It's so boring. I've had both of those like experiences, because I was the very agitated kid and somewhat of a polite kid.
Nice. And it's interesting actually that you say that all the players are the same, because I think there's a lot of times where coaches will give a bias towards a certain player, and they might not think that they do, but it's almost the subconscious thing of actually they tend to favour a certain type of player, and it might be that it's a type of player that was similar to themselves when they were playing. So no, it's quite interesting actually that you mentioned that you sort of try and treat everybody the same, and whatnot. So like I say, very, very interesting point you made there. Lip, obviously where you're at now, coaching qualifications wise, are you looking to progress onto that next step and gain more coaching qualifications, or do you feel like maybe actually I'm quite happy and you might turn your hand to maybe other qualifications such as talent ID and scouting?
After I've handed in my level 2 project, I will just stay there in terms of coaching. I will probably pursue my talent ID to a level 2, make sure I've got something of most things up to level 2, and then stop there, purely because I like the grassroots game. It makes me happy mentally as well, and it's a big part of me. And when I was younger, there were a lot of people when I was playing that couldn't afford to play, and that shouldn't be the case. So I offer my services for free, so every child has that opportunity to progress and to have some sort of start in life as a footballer, even if it's not what they want to be competitively in the future. Every child has the right to physical education outside of school, and that is me doing my bit for the community, and that's what I see it as, and nothing more and nothing less.
Perfect. No, it's interesting that you are obviously looking to maybe, like you say, finish off there with your level 2, look into your talent ID level 2 and everything like that, and almost you feel comfortable with the level and the environment that you're looking to work in. I think perhaps a lot of people just want to keep jumping and get courses done as quickly as possible without taking some time out to really sort of apply what they've learned on these coaching courses, and things like that. And Lipa, with your wealth of coaching knowledge and experience, and having been through a university system which tries to help its coaches develop as much as possible, what would you say could be done to help coaches develop further?
Oh. Having the ability to coach without a lot of equipment, to sort of mimic what's there in third world countries, to having everything there and using equipment efficiently instead of wasting equipment. And I feel as though the higher you go, where there's more money, you tend to have silly equipment that you don't need. And I say this because I went to Atletico Madrid last year, and I watched the under 12s train. And you'd think Atletico Madrid, they'll have so much money. However, they just had a normal table, garden table, and they were using it as a kick-up table. I don't know how to say it, like ping pong, but with kick-ups. And they kick the ball onto the table, and it goes to the other person, and then they kick it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think it's the tech ball.
Yes,
the tech ball thing. Yeah, no, they're really, really good. I like them. I like them a lot, to be fair.
So they use something like that, but instead of having this high-tech, branded table, they had a normal garden table, and they utilized that. And to see that they've got all of this equipment, all of this money, but they still know how to use everyday sort of objects is quite intriguing, quite fascinating, and we should apply that definitely in this country more, because I feel as though when money gets involved, you always ask for, oh, can we have smaller goals, or can we have bigger goals, or can we have this equipment, or we need these vests for our players. However, you could use a more efficient way of doing all of that, which will then decrease the fees for kids to then join the football team. So then, it has that effect on everyone. If you don't spend so much on equipment, you won't need so much from the consumers. So just basically looking out for the man right at the bottom, who's still trying to think about giving their child to a football club that they can essentially afford, and not have to worry about paying the fees, paying for kit, for boots, which is in today's age quite sad that we still have that problem of kids not being allowed to play football purely because of their financial status. I guess what can we do? We could only do our best to influence society, whether it's helping a child get into a club and you sort of offering your time, how I'm doing, or to reach out to your wider network and see if they can provide equipment or kit for that child. So using your network and using what you have to help everyone, sort of, it just goes around, doesn't it? Less equipment,
yeah,
less
no,
money,
I
then
agree.
it just goes around, and then everyone's happy.
Yeah, no, I agree with the less equipment. I mean, I've seen it plenty of times on social media whereby coaches are doing sessions and they have loads and loads of equipment out, and then actually what the content of the session a lot of the time isn't quite relevant for me anyway. Isn't quite relevant to the game. So no, I completely agree in terms of just almost simplifying coaching for people, and just making it, like you say, coach with as minimal equipment really as you possibly can. And even somebody mentioned to me once upon a time that you only need 4 cones to make a session. And that is something I think that has stuck with me for a very, very long time. Just a final one then from me, Lipa. What advice would you give young coaches? I know you mentioned there about trying to coach with less equipment, but if there was, somebody like a young person that's trying to get through into the world of coaching, what advice would you give them as they come through and embark on being a coach?
It's okay if your first session doesn't go how you planned it to. It's okay if you run out of time and you can't finish your session. It's okay for you to make mistakes as a coach, because your players will essentially make those mistakes as well. But as you grow, and with experience, you will get hold of the time. You will get hold of who you work better with, and yeah, your sessions will flow. But take those risks and don't just stay in your box because you're comfortable, and don't just stick to being the assistant coach. Go for head coach. Go for the head coach of the under 12s. Go for the head coach of the first women's team or the first men's team. Push yourself until you're not scared anymore. Push yourself. If it scares you, go for it. If it doesn't scare you, then you're doing something wrong, because dreams are meant to be scary, right?
I guess so. But yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic bit of advice to give anybody really, and it's almost that dream big kind of thing. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, 100%.
Guys, unfortunately, we are out of time. I think I could be here talking for hours and hours upon end, and it just leaves me to thank Lipa Nessa for her time and sharing her experiences, coaching wise, and whatnot. And I think it's been a really, really fantastic and inspiring interview. I'm sure that the listeners will agree as well. Guys, don't forget we are on Spotify, so give us a follow on there at WM32Football. The interview is also up on YouTube, or will be up on YouTube as well. So like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, WM32Football for that. And it just leaves me to say a massive, massive thank you to Lipa Nessa. Lipa, thank you ever so much for your time.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. And we'll hopefully get you on again soon.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.